Hey there, my name is Dave Gambrill from Laxtown Academy, and today I want to answer one of the questions I get all the time, especially from new lacrosse parents. Why is my son running on and off the field so often? It seems like he only spends 2 minutes on the field and then he's off. Well, you're exactly right, because your son is probably playing the position we call midfielder. In lacrosse, you have positions starting with the goalie. You have goalie, then defensemen, then midfielders, then attackmen. And the thing about goalies is they pretty much stay in the goal. Attackmen pretty much stay down with the defensemen. And then the midfielders go up and down and up and down and up and down, because they have to play both ways. That's why they're called midfielders. They play the middle of the field. So you have attack guys that stay down here with their defensive counterparts, and then you have a goalie. But the midfielders spend a lot of time going up and down and up and down. And that's the reason they come off the field so often, because in this short video, I think I'm only about a minute 15 seconds in, I've already gone up and down the field once and I'm just walking. But this is kind of what midfielders do. They'll go down the field, they might hang out for a few seconds, play some offense. Smart midfielders will spend more time playing offense. So when they get the ball, they'll possess it. They'll come down here, play some offense, maybe get a shot on goal, and then they're going to turn around and hustle down the other end, and they got to start playing defense. And this is what playing midfield is all about. So if your son's a midfielder, yes, he comes on and off the field a ton. The other thing you'll see is that there's specialty positions for midfield. If you're just a multi-purpose midfielder, and maybe in the youth level, this is all you have. You just have midfielders. There's really no designation. You just have kids that play midfield, and that's what they do. And they play offense, defense, whatever. But as you start getting older, you're going to get into situations where you have specialty midfielders. So you're going to have a midfielder called a face-off get-off, or a fogo, face-off get-off. What he does is he faces off, they possess the ball, and he subs off the field on the fly through the substitution box, and another midfielder comes on. So if your son happens to be a fogo, he doesn't spend a lot of time on the field at all. He faces off and then gets off the field. But owning the face-off is very important. Being a fogo is very important, because getting possession of the ball is key. You can't score without it, right? The other situation you could have is if maybe your son is a long stick midfielder. So he really only plays when you're on defense. And so let's say that fogo runs off the field, another short stick midi comes on, then they lose the ball. That short stick midi that just came on for the fogo will now run off the field through the box, and another long stick midfielder will come on and play defense. And you can have 4 long poles on the field at a time. So you'll have the 3. Now, the younger levels don't necessarily have long poles, but as you get older, your close defenseman will have the 6-foot sticks. And then you can have one other guy come in as a long stick midi with a stick, long stick. So you can have 4 long poles at a time. So your son could be a long stick midi, and he really only plays defensively. Now, the other situation you could have for midfielders is maybe they're on either the man up or the man down team. So when your team has a penalty against them, you would be man down. And so you would send down your man down unit. Maybe your son is a defensive short stick midi specialist. Told you can only have 4 long poles on the field. So maybe he's a short stick and he's really good at defense. And so he really spends a lot of time playing as that lone short stick when they're man down. So if they're man down, they only have 5 guys playing defense, 6 including the goalie. Maybe he's that short stick defender that plays midfield. So that could be his role. Maybe he's the long stick on the short, on the man down. The inverse is also true. Maybe when you're man up, you have certain middies that are really good at offense, have a really good outside shot, and they put them in on the man up team. And so maybe your son plays specifically in that package, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's one of the midfielders on the field at the time, and he just ran on the field, but all of a sudden there's a penalty, and now he's coming off, and the specialty team, man up, man down, is coming on the field. So you see how it's possible that your son, especially playing at midfield, could be on and off the field so often. It's because there's so many packages and situations and other things you can do. Typically at the younger grades, second graders, third graders, U9, you probably don't have a lot of that. But as you start progressing through the game, that's where you're going to see it. So that's the other thing. Maybe your kid played midi early on, and he played significant minutes because he was on the field for his shift. But now as he starts to get older, maybe he has a very specialized role that he plays. So that's something to consider. The other thing to consider is that, and it's the reason why I shot this video like this, if they are midfielders and they're not in those packages, and we don't have any of those scenarios I just talked about, but they're just out on the field running up and down. I have been shooting this video from on a football field, what would be the 30-yard line to the 30-yard line. So the top of the box, your stranding box, is at the 30-yard line on a football field. It's marked for both football and lacrosse, all the way down to the other 30 down there. And that's typically where the middies are playing from. Now, when they're on offense, defense, whatever, they may drop a little further into the box. But typically they don't get much closer to the goal unless they run something called an invert, which we won't get into in this video, but typically that's where they spend their time. And then they turn around, and if they're defensive, they're not going to get off for a long stick, they got to hustle down the other end and go play defense. Or there's a turnover, and we're turning back around, and we're coming back down here to play offense. So you can see, I didn't pay attention to how many times I was up and down the field in this video, but that is what your son is doing, but he's running. So that is what a midfielder does. And to answer your question in probably the longest way possible, that is why your son runs on and off the field, because that's the role of the midi. He could have a very specialized role that he does as a midi, or maybe he's just a regular midi that's going up and down the field and playing both offense and defense, but just the role of the midi typically is that they play 2 or 3 minutes on the field and then they get off, because it's not like basketball. Basketball floor, what is that, 90 feet? You can go up and down the field a couple times, or down the floor a couple times. In lacrosse, you're running from here, the 30, down to the other 30, 20 at the other end, and back again. And that can get very tiring. So, that is why your son is on and off the field a lot. He probably plays midi, and that's the role of the midi, and it's a very important role. And the sooner he figures out to play whatever the role is he's supposed to fulfill in the midfield, the more successful your team will be. So if you have any other questions about lacrosse, I'd love to teach them to you at Laxtown.com. That's Laxtown Academy, where I share a lot of information like this and training videos just like this one to help answer questions for you, the parent, so you can better understand what the heck is going on out here on the field and better appreciate the awesome game that your son is playing.